Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Our guest today is the one and only commodities investing legend and the former and the founder of Rule Investment Media, our good friend Rick Rule. How are you doing, sir?
The better for being back with you, Ivan. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge pleasure you coming down to Wall Street Silver. Every time you come down, it's a breath of fresh air. With all the chaos and turmoil in the world, you are seeing a lot of countries and central banks stockpile gold at record levels. Why? What do they see that we don't, Rick?
I think from their perspective, they have no choice. The weaponization of the US dollar, the imposition of US foreign policy through the utilization of the world's reserve currency, the US dollar, leaves countries that think that they might be objectionable to the United States no second choice. Whether you agree with what the Russians are doing or not, the fact is, from their perspective, that the US government stole $300 billion worth of their wealth
Yeah, that's a
from
lot.
the
It's a lot
point
of wealth.
from the point of view of other countries, the weaponization of the SWIFT banking system, which is not a U.S. possession, imposing our political will on other third parties is unacceptable to the extent that companies think that they might have a problem with U.S. foreign policies.
Mhm.
And many countries, pursue policies that the U.S. government finds antithetical. So they see the need to defend themselves. And that means, as a medium of exchange, since they don't trust each other either, they need gold.
So what happens when it hits a boiling point? Like you see Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, all of these countries, so many countries now are moving towards the BRICS nations. And they're moving away from the US dollar, like what you were talking about. You know, you're using the US dollar as a weaponization tool, and sooner or later these guys are going to break off and form a group. But will BRICS ever rival the US dollar and the US or no?
Not in my lifetime. The BRICS won't even rival the US dollar in BRICS countries.
Wow.
Uh, the underlying currencies of the countries behind the BRICS are generally opaque and unconvertible. Our mutual friend Doug Casey said the US dollar is a I owe you nothing, the euro is a who owes you nothing. And given the economic status of many of the BRICS nations are nobody owes you anything. A settlement mechanism, perhaps, but my suspicion is that the world's reserve currency will be the US dollar for the balance of my life. For the record, I'm a 71-year-old, very healthy guy, but the US dollar will be less dominant.
Right.
Dominant, but less dominant. So I think that what the BRICS nations really will do is attempt to set up some sort of international settlement system that will be very short term and oriented. I think ultimately that international settlements, even with the BRICS settlement system, will indirectly be in U.S. dollars. I think real
Right.
transfers of wealth will happen increasingly in gold, and I think that's why you've seen central bank purchases of gold.
And there was an article last week, Rick. It was stating that there are now about 63 financial institutions on the FDIC's problem bank list. Is 2024 the year of major bank collapse? We've seen in 2023 you had about four of them. Is that why they're buying so much gold? There's now 63 financial institutions and more and more banks popping up on the problem bank list. What do you see there?
I don't see that impact in the gold price. I do have a bank and organization myself,
That's
and
right.
I can tell you that the FDIC is very busy. It seems that their existing files cause them enough problems that they are not being as quick as I would prefer with their new files. Uh, I do not think that 2024 will see another rash of bank failures, but I wouldn't be surprised to see 2025 and 2026
Hmm.
generate that raft of failures. Right now, the accounting rules promulgated by various federal agencies allow the banks to classify long-term assets uh, as assets held to maturity, which doesn't require them to mark to market. Many of the bank's assets have duration risk, which is to say that they were loans that were written when interest rates were lower. With interest rates higher now, the net present value of those loans are lower, but they're funding those loans with deposit products where their interest is higher. There
Right.
are a lot of banks that would be insolvent were they required to mark their assets to market? They aren't required to do that until the asset comes due. And I have a fear that, particularly with regards to the commercial real estate market, that there's a fair bit of unspoken sin on the balance sheets of some banks, to the extent that those unspoken sins need to become spoken sins in 2025 or 2026. I think then you begin to see some difficulty. And I don't think that that
Right.
difficulty will be confined to smaller banks.
Absolutely. And what would be the greatest opportunity? Like, what would you say to someone who's new in the silver and gold space or the mining space or exploration sector? What would you say to a new investor right now? Like, let's say the AI bubble really pops and you start to see a flood of people in the mining sector. What would you say to that new investor?
Well, I would urge the new investor, first of all, to invest before he or she speculates. Many
Right.
people come into our sector because they hear about the odd penny stock that went up 20-fold, not understanding that most penny stocks are valueless, have no value whatsoever.
Mhm.
The probability of making a bunch of money in penny stocks, if you don't work hard and have some experience, is low. What you do when you look at past markets more thoroughly is you learn that the market beta, which is to say the measure by which mining stocks outperform the broad market during mining bull markets, is sufficient enough to handle most people's most advanced levels of greed. I guess what I'm saying by that is that you start your portfolios as a beginning investor with the best of the best. You buy the Franco Nevadas, you buy the Wheaton precious metals, you buy the Agnico Eagles, you buy the BHP, you buy the Glencore, you buy the Rio. If we are headed, as I believe we are, into a natural resources and precious metals bull market, you will likely be able to enjoy 200 or 300% gains with the best of the best, and you'll likely be able to pocket dividends while you wait,
Wow.
in case the market changes later than you would like. If then you are willing to work hard, if you are willing to spend at least an hour a month for every stock in your portfolio, reading quarterly reports, reading annual reports, reading management information circulars,
Mhm.
proxies, then by all means, if you're willing to do the work, come down into the juniors. But until you have the necessary time and expertise to operate in that space, be very careful.
And what would what would be the expertise you would need? Like if you're a new investor and what's the first thing you would look at a mining company, whether it's silver or gold? Would you look at their management? Would you look at their past success or
Well,
how would you look at it?
thank you for the opportunity. I would go to the real classroom and review 13 and a half hours of instructional material as to how to understand a mining stock. The smaller the company, the more important the people are. The truth is that Pareto's law applies in mining, which is to say that 20% of the people generate 80% of the utility in the sector.
Hmm.
The number is big enough that that number conformably aligns again, which is to say that 4 or 5% of the people generate about 65% of the utility in the people in the sector. Find the serially successful people and stick with them. That's the most important thing. If the story doesn't make sense, it's probably because it doesn't make sense. It's probably nonsense. So pay some attention and use common sense. Let's say that somebody believes that as a consequence of some data that they're going to have an exploration success. Find out what it would require for them to enjoy that success and prove it to the market. Ask them how long that might take to occur. Uh, Compare that time frame with the time frame that you expected, and then finally ask them how much money it will take them to get from here to there, and
Right.
ask them if they have any money. In probably 85% of the cases where you pursue this strategy, you will not buy the stock.
Right, because they won't have everything lined up.
They won't have anything lined up.
Wow.
Their plan for the future is simply making sure that they have a salary 18 months from now. That's it.
Wow.
Important to them, less important to you.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic insight. Thank you so much for that, Rick. You do have a seminar coming up. Can you tell everyone about that?
Yeah, the other thing you can do in terms of educating yourself is to come to my conference. It's in its 28th year, which suggests for 28 years we've done something right.
Right.
What is it that we have done right? Well, we have great big picture thinkers. We have the Jim Rickards, the Doug Caseys, the Bill Bonners, the Daniela DiMartino Bruths. People who tell you the way the world really is, not the way that CNBC or CBC wishes it was. After you have a clearer picture of the world, we have analysts and portfolio managers who have made money in natural resources for 30 years. Not some moron investment banker who failed at crypto, failed at technology, failed at pot stocks and psilocybin that parachuted into natural resources, but rather people who have been continuously employed in resources for 20, 30, 40 years. Beyond that, my most favorite feature, we have what I call the living legends, people who have built multi-billion-dollar companies from scratch,
Wow.
telling you how they did it, helping you get the tools to identify the $5 million company that could become a $5 billion company. This living legends thing is incredible. Of course, then every public company exhibitor at our conference is content, not just advertisers. We vetted every single one. Any public company that exhibits at our conference has to be owned by the conference sponsor. Sadly, Ivan, there's no guarantee that because I own a stock, it goes up. But
Right.
there is a guarantee that the process is honest. Uh, yes, they have to write me a check to be at the conference, but I've written them a check first to
Right.
buy the stock. Finally, the crux, absolute gold plated money back guarantee. Whether you come to my conference live, July 7th through 11th in Boca Raton, Florida, or in the comfort and convenience of your own home via live stream, two promises. You'll have access to the full conference recordings so that you can listen to the conference again and again and again. You'll need to. We're going to give you 60 hours of programming in 4 days. The
Wow.
second gold-plated promise is this: whether you attend live or live stream, if you don't believe for any reason whatsoever that we haven't given you sufficient value for your money, we'll give you your money back. Just email me. No questions asked. Money back guarantee. I think that sets us apart from any other investment conference on the planet. The financial risk is all mine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm gonna put a link in the description below so everyone can get their tickets to that right away. That'll be in the link description below. Well, thank you so much, Rick, for coming down to Wall Street Silver. But before you head out, I wanted you to get I know you don't do too much on price predictions for gold and silver, but let's touch on silver before you go. Where do you see silver going? We've seen the breakout over $30 this past couple of months, and everyone thinks, that was the level it needs to break off to 50. What do you see with silver?
I couldn't care less about those psychological breaks.
Right.
I don't own precious metals for 10% moves or 20% moves. I own gold because I watched in the year 2000 it go from $252 to $1,900 over 10 years. In other words, I don't own it for a 20% move.
Right,
I own it
right.
for a 5 or 6 fold move. I own silver because I watched it go from $4 to $50, a 12-fold move. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen quickly, but I actually could not care less if silver was $30 or $32 or $33 or $27. I own it because after the primary trend is established by gold, silver traditionally has moved further and faster. I
Right.
will admit to you, Ivan, I own more gold than I own silver because my primary investment motivation around precious metals is fear. But I do own silver because silver is more volatile to the upside. I can afford a bit of risk. If I'm wrong, it doesn't change my decision as to what to have for breakfast.
Absolutely.
Uh, and as I've told you before on your show, in the 1970s, I watched Coeur d'Alene mines go from 10 cents to $65.
That is
That was a
insane.
fairly instructive lesson. I didn't
Wow.
participate because I was too young, too dumb, and too poor. However, not too long after that, end of the 1980s, I financed Pan American silver at 50 cents, watched it go to $45
Oh,
in
wow.
6 years.
Oh,
I
that's
watched Silver Standard go from 72 cents to over $40 in 6 years.
wow.
I own silver, and more particularly silver stocks, out of pure greed. I'm not suggesting I'm going to be right. If I am right, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen soon. I have about 2.5% of my portfolio in silver and silver stocks,
Mhm.
and I own it because I think they might end up being 25% of my portfolio with no additional capital additions.
That's an incredible return. Well, that's fantastic. I can't believe it went from 10 cents to $65. That's insane.
And I can't believe it went there without me, Ivan, but it did.
That's too good. Well, Rick, again, it's such a huge pleasure you coming down to Wall Street Silver. Again, for everyone, anyone who wants to participate, I'll have the link in the description below for the tickets for a seminar. Again, Rick, such a huge pleasure for you coming down here.
Ivan, I look forward to hosting you in Boca Raton, July 7th through 11.
Yes, absolutely.